Welcome to my channel. I want to today cover the hammer, the air hammer and the spring hammer. Apparently there's been some issues and people not understanding quite the functionality of it and how it works and what you do with it. You know, in the past with other weapons, or not weapons, but guns, the harmony between the spring hammer or the hammer and the plenum, you had to have that nice little balance so that you had a nice shot string. And if you had too much hammer or not enough hammer, it created issues and changed your shot string. But what RTI came up with was the air valve, and the air valve kind of made that a little simpler, but you still had to have enough hammer to open the valve. If you didn't have enough hammer to open the valve, you weren't getting full speed. So basically you would just turn the hammer in until it had enough energy to open the valve, and then the valve took over from there. And then the valve did all its opening and closing after that. So you'd have that quick open and close. And then, you know, we then with like the P2, P3, the P3 is we couldn't adjust the dwell. The dwell was kind of just there. If you increase chamber pressure, then it would shorten the dwell. So, you know, then you'd have to run really high pressures, and there was, you know, not a bad thing. But it was very consistent, and that's what we want. We want our shot string to be consistent and short. Ideally, I can take my P1 and I can adjust that thing down to 1.5 on standard deviation with a max of 6, and that's crazy. But with this gun, whether it's a spring or an air hammer, you know, 2 to 2.5, you know, I'm very good. I'm very happy with that. And you can get that just boom, just instantaneously. So back to the hammer. On the spring hammer, basically what I do is I pull the side plate off and I adjust the Allen wrench to where it just touches the spring and the spring is just touching the hammer, and I give it one full turn. And generally that's enough to open that valve from 80 bar to 200 bar on the reg. But you really need to adjust that correctly, because your shot string does suffer if if you set it to open at the setting that I just said, and you go all the way up to 200 bar, 220 bar, which you can easily do if you set your first reg correctly. You do have to increase the hammer. That's a huge change. I did find that once I found that spot and I can get kind of in the middle with the hammer, I could jump from one side to the other. You know, I can go from 80 bar to 220 bar, but at 80 bar, the hammer was hitting hard and you could hear it. It would clack in your ears. You pull it, you can tell the hammer was just overdone. And then at the higher end, you know, you could tell you were right on the edge of the valve opening, you know, itself, when the air valve, because how it works with the RTI, the air valve itself is, you know, once you crack the seal, it uses that pressure to help open itself, and then it takes chamber pressure. And once the air hits the chamber and starts pushing the projectile, that air pressure goes back in and tells the valve to close. So you have a quick open, and then you have your dwell time, and then it's a quick shut. And with the Mora, now we have with the air valve, we can adjust the dwell, so we can change how long the air is. So we have a quick open and then a quick close, and then we can adjust the timing of how long the valve's open. And it's just phenomenal. I mean, it's crazy. It really makes a difference. So on the spring hammer, like I said, screw it in till it touches, and the spring's just pressing one screw in, and then that'll generally work you all the way up into the 120s, 130s, 140s without an issue. Once you get above that, then you need to start increasing the spring a little bit, and you just watch your shot string and make sure you're getting down to the 2.5, you know, in the twos, which is incredible. You know, that's with a standard deviation, depending on the ammo you're shooting, your max can be, you know, 10, 11, 12 sometimes, depending on the ammunition. If you're shooting really good ammunition, that's well machined, well sized, and weighed out, you can get some crazy standard deviation in max spreads. You just, that's really, a lot of people, they look at the shot string and they're looking at, why is it so crazy? Well, look at the ammo you're shooting. That could have a lot to do with it before you start messing with the gun. So I do weigh my ammo. Certain manufacturers I need to weigh. Arturos, don't weigh it, not at all. ELR from Zan, don't weigh it, not at all. The pellets from Zan, don't weigh them, not at all. Perfect. You still get you can get a flyer out of them still, because it's not 100% perfection. But JSBs, yeah, you better weigh them and inspect them. There's a huge weight variance between them, and that does make a difference on your shot string and your deviation, your max spread. So back to the hammer again. The spring hammer, that's it. It's very simplistic. You just got to get it to open. You can play with it a little bit and just make sure your shot string gets pretty decent, and then you're fine. And at that point, you just run your regulator in and out and get to your barrel harmonics until your pattern tightens up, and then I highly recommend a digital gauge because you're going to want to run within 1 to 2 bar for that to maintain that harmonic balance once you find it. During the day, it's cold in the morning, hot in the afternoon, your reg pressures will change. If you don't have a digital gauge, you won't know it. If you got an analog, you're not going to see it. And you're going to wonder, well, I was shooting fine this morning and my pattern's opened up in the afternoon. Maybe my barrel's dirty. No, it's most likely your reg pressure has changed. And that's what's causing your POI shift or your grouping just to open. So now on the air hammer, like I started to say, the air hammer uses plenum pressure, and that's what goes behind the pneumatic piston that pushes the hammer. And with that, you don't, it's the opposite of the adjustment that you would think. You think if you want more hammer, you screw it in. But in all reality, what it'll do with this gun is you'll start holding the valve open because you're, well, not necessarily, yeah, you kind of are holding the valve open. And so you could have an air leak because you're holding the valve open, so you can hear it through the barrel. When you got it cocked open, you'll hear it going shh. That's because not if it's cocked, but when it's closed. When you cock it, you're pulling the hammer back, so the hammer's not touching the valve. But when it's closed and you can hear out of the end of the barrel that you hear air coming out, you might want to look at the air hammer. Now the air hammer, this is the air hammer on this gun. You can hear the clicking, and that clicking is the amount of play that I have between the hammer and the pneumatic piston. And you don't want, you want play. And if you want a little more energy out of the hammer, you increase the play because the piston has time enough to speed up before it makes contact with the piston and delivers more energy. But that's a fine, it's such a small window that basically all you want is to adjust that screw to where the hammer is just floating between the valve and the pneumatic piston. And then that gives you the proper adjustment. And it's eighths of a turn to find the right spot. But basically, if you just get in there to where you get a 1/2 mil play, that's your sweet spot, just right there. And I've taken that and I've done it to where I just lost my play, and I've taken it and screwed it out a whole bunch. And all it does is mess everything up, and that didn't matter what pressure I was running at. So you adjust this to where it's just loose and floating, and that's it. Forget it. Leave it alone. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. There's in your brain, if you're working with an older gun or a spring hammer, you're thinking, no, I got too much hammer or too. No, that doesn't exist with this gun. You set it and forget it. Very similar to the dwell valve on this gun until you change ammo, like the grainage, or you go from a slug to a pellet. Is the only time you mess with the dwell, or grainage change. It's just the weight, chamber pressure, and that's when you start changing the dwell. But once you put a particular, you select your ammo, so let's say 60 grain queen and 25 cal. I'll set the dwell to where I get max speed, and I kind of go up and find out that I'm not getting any more. And then I bring it back to where it just starts to drop a little bit. And now I know I'm on that peak, the top of the rainbow, as Steve would say. And then I would back it down, screw the dwell in to reduce my dwell time by 20 to 30 feet per second. And then once you do that, you can play with that a little bit in and out. I'll get a little more into that in a bit, but and this is kind of a set it and forget it. But the air hammer, 100%. Once you get that play in there and the gun is firing and it's got a decent shot string, and then we're talking just nudging that one way or the other to find out where it's at, to find the sweet spot. You just forget about it. Put the butt back on and don't touch it. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. It's good. And that's from 80 bar to 220 bar, 225 bar. It doesn't matter. You just leave it alone, because as the plunger pressure increases, so does the hammer. So it's always balanced. They move perfectly with each other. So that eliminates that whole finding the spring hammer harmony balance thing, So anyways, that's pretty much the air hammer in itself. I know a lot of people, they have to play, they have to, it's in their head because of previous guns that they've owned, and honestly, you just leave the hammer alone. Rock and the guys at the shop, when they put the guns together, they pretty much set that and it's done. Now, as you shoot the gun and you put lots of rounds through it, this gun here, I'm probably close to 15,000 rounds through it. I did notice, I did have to open that gap up a little bit, as I had to close it a little bit. It was a little big because the surface is wearing and all that kind of stuff. So I did have to move it in a little bit. So that's great that we have that ability to adjust that, because it was really sloppy. And I screwed it in and messed with it, and it was like going, wow, man, I got loose. Because I did mess with it a little bit in the beginning when I first received the gun. So yeah, so that's the hammer. If you got any questions, hit me up in the comments, and yeah, we'll go from there. And I hope this was helpful. I don't think I skipped anything. I think my next video, I'll probably get into the dwell valve a little bit, but I kind of covered almost the extent of it already. And the other crucial aspect is the shroud tension, and setting your shroud up correctly. Really makes a difference, having a tension barrel and having that done correctly. It does make a difference. But yeah, so I hope this was helpful to everybody. And again, you got more questions, throw it in the comments. I'll do my best to answer your questions, and if you need more help, maybe we can DM and go from there. But anyways, enjoy.